Why did the Laura Lee palette flop? Hi, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a fantastic day so far because it's about to get much better. We are going to be looking into the multiple reasons why the recent Laura Lee Cats in Pajamas palette flopped 1 or 2 days ago. The palette was set to launch on October 13th, which is the same date as Fenty was releasing her Galaxy collection. One of the first points, I think, is the marketing material. So why don't we go to my computer and take a look. So let's start with the website. This is probably the best place for us to start. So this is lauraleelosangeles.com, and this is where she is selling her palette as well as on Morphe. When we initially come to the website, the banner doesn't seem to fit properly. I actually can't see the shades, and I also can't see the full name of the palette. I am glad that she finally corrected the punctuation error that she had. For a long time, the banner on her channel said Cats Pajamas with an apostrophe over the S on the pajamas, which just isn't correct. Everyone makes mistakes with grammar and punctuation. It happens all the time naturally. But when you are attempting to launch a brand and launch a product to the entire world, those sorts of errors can really cost you customers because it makes you look unprofessional and makes it look like you don't really care. So that was just one thing. I'm glad that she has resolved that issue. As I scroll down, there are 3 banners for the palette. It looks like 3 separate links. Like when I move over them, they hover differently, but it is for the same product. So that's a bit confusing. And also with that, I also can't see half the shades of the palette from the get-go on the website. Like on all of the website marketing material when I first visit, I can't see the shades, so that's quite irritating. It makes it look like there's 3 different products, like there's a shiny silvery palette, there's a floral palette, and there's this box, you know? It doesn't make sense. That's just the first thing. As I scroll down, it says fashion, so now there's an option for fashion, so as well as this being a makeup brand, it's also a fashion brand. Now obviously Laura Lee's an influencer, she has merchandise, but it sends a very confusing message if you're trying to launch a professional makeup brand alongside random merchandise with like caps and stuff like that. It's very, very confusing. For me personally, I think if she was really trying to market herself as a real makeup brand, she really should have kept fashion away from it unless it was really strictly related to the makeup. But at the same time, there doesn't seem to be any association within the makeup itself. I mean, if we take a look at the actual palette, why don't we go through to the palette? Okay, I'm going to enlarge this for you. So this is the Laura Lee Cats Pajamas palette, okay? So we've already spoken about this briefly, but I want to do another breakdown for you, just hopefully so this makes sense, because this is a lot of what resonates on the internet, and I'll go and show you this afterwards. Okay, so the box is floral with silver stamp, with printing over the top of that. The inner box is glitter. So we've gone from silver stamp to glitter, completely different effect. The logo is now pink, whereas before it was silver. And we've lost the floral element on the actual palette itself. Now we just have glitter, which is just confusing because glitter is completely different to flowers. It's completely different to a sort of clean silver stamp, so it is confusing. Then if we go to the actual inside of the palette, we have these roses around the actual palette mirror, which take up quite a significant portion of the mirror when you come to think of it. That space could have been used to actually use the mirror. It's very strange to take up so much of the mirror. If we have a look into the actual flower design, this doesn't appear like it's a brochet, is that the right word, of flowers that's beautifully sort of framing the mirror. If we take a close look, you can see this actually looks like a copied and pasted PNG picture of a rose. Now I did say to you last time, you can be investigators, go and investigate. Do you think she has a license to use this PNG rose? Because it doesn't look like she's employed a graphic designer to create the design. It looks like a rose that's been copied and pasted. Maybe you'll find it on a simple Google search, and maybe you can purchase the rights to the image. Maybe the rights haven't been purchased. If you are selling, and this is very much like the Jeffree Star getting sued by Black Moon Cosmetics for using their logo. Very, very similar to that situation. I'm just thinking in the same way James Charles used the artist's music without their permission, whether he credited them 24 hours, 40 hours later, finally, doesn't change the difference. He didn't have a permission from the artist, he didn't have a license to use the song, so that's a whole thing in itself. Like the artist could theoretically sue James Charles. And in this situation, if Laura hasn't purchased the rights to this rose, and for some reason my gut is telling me that she hasn't, she could very easily be sued for that as well. When you're an influencer and you are making $75,000 a month from Morphe, around that mark from what I was told from someone inside Morphe, you can afford to pay $2,000 to a graphic designer to properly create the graphics for your palette, which you're going to try and sell as your leading opening product to hundreds of thousands of people. But again, I can't confirm if she has or hasn't copied and pasted this from Google. It just looks that way. And if we look at the bottom half of the palette, it's the exact same thing. There's these roses copied and pasted, copied and pasted. Maybe they've resized them. I think they have slightly, but it doesn't look like a professional job. It looks like a 14-year-old has been sat on Photoshop resizing the same image to create a collage. That's how it comes across. As for the actual names, they're apparently things that she says. They're her famous quotes, and that's very good in terms of her connecting with her fan base. But at the same time, there's no cohesion whatsoever with the actual palette. We have roses on the outside with silver stamp here. Then we have glitter, and then we have these names: Okie Dokie, Scatterbrain, Bomb Diggity, Cray Cray, Redonkulous, Quirky, Kooky, in one ear, out the other. Oddball. There's no relation to Cat's Pajamas, there's no relation to glitter, and there's no relations to floral patterns. So again, it's just a real severe lack of cohesion. In terms of the actual names lining up to the colours, there doesn't appear to be any association. It just looks like Laura took her most used phrases, applied them to a set of colours, and sort of went from there. Next of all, why don't we very briefly go through the shade range, because there's so much to talk about in this video. The shades themselves were critiqued on being very bland, and Laura herself often drags brands in her videos for having shades that have been done before, and so she was completely ripped apart for this palette for basically having a shade selection which is very, some would say boring. I'm not going to give my own opinion on this. I really do want to just express to you what the internet has been saying, and we are going to go through some receipts as we do this. If we look at this thumbnail where you can see the colours all together, again you can see it looks very similar to the Zoeva She. Now obviously there are definitely differences, but this is the Zoeva She palette, which is $16. This is the Laura Lee eyeshadow palette, which is $40, not including shipping. To get this palette to the UK, I think it's something around $22, so it would cost you $62 approximately, probably a bit more than that I think from what I was hearing, to get this to the UK, which is about £50, £55 for this palette from an unheard of brand with a very sort of bland shade range, compared again to the Zoeva palette here. Again, compared to the Zoeva palette, they're not identical whatsoever, but there are definite similarities, and the Zoeva palette is less than half the price. Okay, so now that we've gone through that briefly, this is the part I was really sort of waiting to get to. Let's go through the actual marketing material. Okay, so why don't we read this together? Cat's Pajamas eyeshadow palette. Add to cart. First of all, the actual layout of the page is very bland. The colour scheme is confusing. All I can see is this sort of mauve shade, but there's no bordering, there's no framing, there's no cohesion. It looks like a blank slate with some words, with some things, and then with a Shopify standard thing in the middle. It doesn't look like it's actually been designed, especially in terms of the text. It just looks like there's a big long list of text with some underlining, with some ingredients thrown in full size again, and then you can tweet it, you know? So it doesn't make too much sense there. And again, I'm on the cosmetics section, but at the bottom of the page I'm seeing sizing charts. That isn't appropriate to cosmetics, and that's irritating. If I'm looking at fashion, I want to see sizing charts. If I'm looking at makeup, I want to see things to do with makeup. Don't irritate me by mixing the two, because they're completely unrelated. Why didn't we go through the reading list? Cat's Pajamas eyeshadow palette. 10 pressed powder eyeshadow palette. Highly pigmented. Okay, first of all, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They should be individual bullet points, or they should be put into a sentence. First of all, why don't we go from the actual beginning? 10 pressed powder. There's a space before the 10. It's incredibly irritating for me to see with my eyes. It looks like no attention has been put into this page. Okay, so why don't we start reading? Space. 10 pressed powder eyeshadow palette. Highly pigmented, 5 mattes, 4 shimmers, and 1 semi matte / satin. Okay, where should we even begin with this? Where should we begin with this? Okay, 5 mattes, 4 shimmers. There should be a comma between 5 mattes and 4 shimmers. That isn't me being picky. That's basic English grammar. If you are leading through a sentence, you need to have commas, otherwise it doesn't read properly. When people read the sentence, they don't get the flow, they don't get the structure. What it should actually be is, I'm even struggling to rephrase this. This is an eyeshadow palette with 10 pressed powders? Is that what we're going for? I'm really sort of confused here. She really could have just gone with eyeshadow. 5 mattes, comma, 4 shimmers, and 1 semi matte / satin. Okay, semi is spelt incorrectly. There's no mistake for that. I don't care if you have dyslexia. I don't care what the situation is here. I have issues with reading. I can still spell words properly. You can use word and you can have people proofread. There's absolutely no excuse for that. To be misspelling the word semi within the first 2 lines of your product description, there's no excuse. Simi matte. Is that some word? Why don't we Google? Maybe I'm missing out here. Saimi is a discreet and unusual woman who is surrounded by an aura of mystery, probably due to her seeming aloof and distant demeanour. Indeed, she is very secretive, enigmatic, oh, that's a big word, and possesses impressive self-mastery. Maybe that's what Laura Lee was going for here, but for some reason, I actually just feel like she made a really poor spelling mistake. Let's just move on, because I feel like I'm confusing myself with that one. This makeup line is cruelty-free and vegan. First of all, there isn't a makeup line, there is one item, so I kind of get what she's trying to say, but it's very difficult to say this line when it's not a line, it's a singular item. Fantastic that it's cruelty-free and vegan, very similar to Jeffree Star. It's also being shipped from Jeffree Star's warehouse that he owns, from what I understand. The Laura Lee palette is being shipped from the warehouse Killer Merch LLC, which is owned by Jeffree Star, which is the same warehouse which is managing Jeffree Star's Merchandise's own merchandise, from what I understand. Also Manny MUA's merchandise, and also Laura Lee's merchandise, and potentially Kylie Cosmetics. Just because Kylie Cosmetics arrived, we saw some ants arriving with ants, which is the same thing we saw with Jeffree Star Cosmetics packages. So, but just because they're both based in Calabas, it did cross my mind. So it is being shipped from Jeffree Star's warehouse. It does have a similar sort of setup as Jeffree Star makeup, has the same sort of thing with the mirror. And so I do question, was this basically made by Jeffree and sort of thrown together by Laura? I don't think this was done through a professional shadowing company, just because of how much of a mess the actual design of the palette is, in terms of the roses being copied and pasted, etc. Anyone else would have invested $500 to $1,000 to have just had someone do that properly. Okay, let's read the next line. Let's get on to the next line. Luxe eyeshadows plus the palette with a fabulous mirror, proudly produced in the United States. Luxe eyeshadows plus the palette with a fantastic mirror. That makes absolutely no sense. I don't know what she was trying to say here, but it doesn't make any sense when you read it. Luxe eyeshadows plus the palette. No, the palette contains the eyeshadows and a mirror. You're not getting individual eyeshadows plus the palette or a palette. It should be a palette if that was the case, with a fantastic... Do you understand what I'm saying here? It doesn't make sense. It's not the case. It's an eyeshadow palette with a mirror. I don't know if she's trying to be fancy. Luxe is a nice word. The only thing luxe about this is the price. The actual product doesn't appear to be luxurious whatsoever. And to be honest, the price isn't luxurious, it's just high. Proudly produced in the United States, congratulations. Whether a makeup beginner or a pro makeup artist with years of experience, both could enjoy Cat's Pajamas eyeshadow palette. I feel like this is written by someone where English isn't their first language. Whether you are a makeup beginner or a pro makeup artist with years of experience, no matter what the experience level, both would enjoy, both would benefit from, both could use. Do you understand what I mean? Let me just read it to you again so you can get this. Whether a makeup beginner or a pro makeup artist with years of experience, both could enjoy Cat's Pajamas eyeshadow palette. Both could enjoy the Cat's Pajamas eyeshadow palette. Why are you missing the word the? It just doesn't make any sense. Enjoy the. It's a noun. It's a name. Cat's Pajamas. So you have to announce it as a noun. The Cat's Pajamas eyeshadow palette. Doesn't make sense. Why don't we just move on to the next line? Featuring the following shades: Redonkulous, Copper Shimmer, Okie Dokie, Off-White Matte, Scatterbrain, Pale Gold Shimmer, Bomb Diggity Caramel Matte, Cray Cray, Deep Burnt Orange Matte, Quirky Deep Purple Shimmer, Kooky Aramanth Matte. Let's Google Aramanth. Okay, so this is... Because if people don't know what this word means, Aramanth, they're going to Google it. So let's see what comes up when you search on Google. Okay, so it's this purple shade. It's a plant. It seems very strange for her to be giving such simple copper, white, gold, caramel, orange, purple. Did you see what I mean? There's no cohesion. Why are you just throwing a different word into there? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You either use exceedingly difficult words that people have to Google, like Chanel, to try and make things more complicated, or you keep it simple. I don't understand how you can have these two halves here. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There. Okay, then we have burgundy, plum, black. Very, very simple. I've never heard anyone just say, oh, what kind of shade is it? Oh, it's an Aramanth. Do you know what I mean? I just don't get it. Like, is your palette for kids with simple words, or is it for the more mature market with these complicated words that they want to be bougied out by? Free shipping on domestic orders over $100. So if you buy 3 of these palettes for $40 each, you'll get free shipping. If you give Laura Lee $120 for 3 of this, then she isn't going to charge you for the shipping. That's £110, £105, I think, in English currency. Why don't we calculate on minimum wage what that would work out to? I think it's $7.20. Okay, so 105. Okay, 120 US dollars in Great British pounds. 90. Oh wow, exchange rates. Okay, so 90 divided by 7.2. You would have to work 12 hours. So you would have to work a full-time job on minimum wage for 2 days to be able to afford 3 of this. I kind of feel like within that hour you could probably buy the ingredients and make it yourself. I'm sorry. When she's listed the ingredients, she's left a space here. You can instantly see there's a space there that shouldn't be there. It's irritating. It's not even reciprocated in the other listings for the other ingredients, so there's just no reason for it to be there. It's irritating. It doesn't make any sense. So now that we've moved on from that, why don't we go through the ingredients? There are some formulas that are similar, but with eyeshadows, that's very, very common. So it doesn't look like the formula has been copied from anything else. Okay, I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison of the ingredients in the Laura Lee palette versus the Jeffree Star palette. These are, why don't we do the mattes? That's probably the best place to start. So we'll start with Poison, and let's pick a matte from the Laura Lee palette. Different, Caroline Glycol. Wow, Laura Lee. That is stupid. That is really stupid. So Laura Lee claims that this is the formula, okay? So I was Googling this and I was thinking, oh, that's strange that nothing's coming up for that, and I'm not able to find anything. So I actually went through the ingredients themselves, and bear in mind, I formulate all my own eyeshadows myself. I've formulated for years. I have a very good understanding of formulating eyeshadows, liquid lipsticks, highlighters, all of that stuff from physically doing it myself and coming from a biology and chemistry background formally. When I look at this, I'm seeing that her mica is at the bottom. Now, when you are doing ingredients for cosmetics, the one that's of highest percentage in the formula goes at the top, and then you work your way down to the smallest at the bottom, okay? Her mica, which is the pigment, is towards the bottom. Mica would usually make up, what, like 30 to 60%, depending on what you're putting into your eyeshadow. So that would be right at the very top, one of the largest percentages. Capryl glycol, that is a oil. That's an oil from coconut oil. Boron nitride, kaolin. It just doesn't make sense to me how the mica is at the bottom, but all of these are above. Like zinc cerate, I'm pretty sure I use that as a bulking agent. It's a water repellent. Yeah, so this is a matte shade as well. If this was like an oily shade, I would be like, but Kooky looks like a matte. Yeah, that's Kooky there. That's the matte shade. Am I being weird here? Like, am I... Like, mica and talc are always at the very, very top. Look at any palette, look at a Morphe palette, look at anything. Those are always the main ingredients because that's the pigment. When I'm formulating eyeshadows, I had a very small percentage of zinc stearate. You would not use it in a high percentage. Same goes for capryl glycol. That's an oil. This isn't an oil product. This is an eyeshadow. What I think she's done here is I think potentially this formula may be the same as someone else's. And what she's done to try and offset that is just change the list. But obviously you can't just do that, because when you change the list of the ingredients, you're changing what the actual composition of the formula is in terms of the amounts of things. So this just doesn't make sense to me. I'm looking at the ingredients list and I'm like, no, I could go and mix this now and it wouldn't be pretty. It would be oily, it would be wet, and it would have very little pigment, which is not a matte. So I'm very confused right now. Very, very confused. I don't know what she was doing. See, the one at the bottom, we have mica at the top. That makes sense. Again, for this, please look into it yourself. Please do your own research. Maybe I'm being stupid. Let me get a palette that I think has a similar formulation to this. No, I wasn't mistaken. I'm really questioning myself because this is sort of like, I don't want to make a mistake with this, but this is the palette I was thinking it would be similar to. This is a Makeup Revolution Pro HD Amplified 35 palette. No, I'm right. There's something dodgy here. There's something very, very dodgy with Laura Lee's formula. This doesn't make sense. Why would the mica be there? Look at this. This is the top ingredient. This is the one that there's the most of in the formula, okay? It's a conditioning agent. It's a triester. And then here we have coconut oil, a fraction of coconut oil. See, this one makes more sense. Quirky has mica at the top. The rest of the formula is the same as the other ones, but the other one's mica's been moved to the bottom. So why don't we Google this? She has doctored this formula. In my opinion, she's messed around with this formula to change it so it doesn't look similar to someone else's. Look at this. Mica is listed twice in the ingredients list. It's the same ingredient. You don't ever do that. Like, ever. There's no reason to ever do that. And it shouldn't be at the bottom because it would always be at the top. It would be one of the highest concentration ingredients. Cookie fam. Every ounce of my being is telling me this formula has been doctored, and there is no reason to doctor a formula unless you have something to hide. The same ingredient would never be repeated twice. What is the real story here?